Before you spend that dime, take a closer look. Some Roosevelt dimes from the 1960s, 1980s, and even 2000s have rare mint errors worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. You could be holding a small silver fortune without knowing it. 1989 was a year when the world was shifting toward a new era. Technology was advancing, culture was evolving, and America was preparing to close out a transformative decade. Inside the U.S. Mint, millions of coins were being struck daily. Pennies, nickels, quarters, and dimes, each a small piece of everyday life. Among those billions of coins, the 1989 Roosevelt dime seemed ordinary, just another 10-cent piece used for parking meters, payphones, and change at the corner store. But, as collectors would later discover, some of these dimes were far from ordinary. A handful were born from minting errors so unusual that they would capture the fascination of numismatists around the world. These were coins that, through pure accident, became treasures worth tens of thousands of dollars, some fetching prices between $42,000 and $120,000 at major auctions. To understand what makes the 1989 dime so special, you have to start with how it was made. The Roosevelt dime, introduced in 1946, has long symbolized American perseverance and honor, bearing the image of the president who led the nation through its toughest days. By 1989, the coin's composition had changed from silver to a copper-nickel clad, but the design remained timeless. The mint's machinery struck hundreds of coins per second with precision, but even the most sophisticated systems are vulnerable to the smallest imperfections. And when something goes slightly wrong in that process, that's when history happens. The 1989 dime is known among collectors for its remarkable error varieties. Some of these mistakes are subtle, while others are so dramatic that they look like completely different coins. One of the most recognizable is the off-center strike, a condition that occurs when the blank planchet isn't properly aligned between the dies before being struck. When this happens, part of Roosevelt's face might be cut off, or the rim might show an uneven blank crescent of unstruck metal. A dime with a 5% misalignment is interesting, but one with a 40% or greater off-center strike, especially with the full date visible, is a showstopper. Those examples, when graded in mint state, have sold for thousands. Another fascinating error from that year is the broad strike. This happens when a coin is struck without the restraining collar that normally shapes its edge. Without that collar, the metal spreads outward during striking, creating a dime that looks wider, flatter, and slightly distorted. To the untrained eye, it might look like someone flattened it, but collectors recognize the difference immediately. Broad-struck coins from 1989, especially in uncirculated condition, have fetched several $1,000s depending on how bold the spread appears. Then there's the double die error, a mistake that occurs during the creation of the die itself, when the image is impressed twice at a slightly different angle. On some 1989 dimes, this doubling can be seen in the inscriptions, "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and even the date. Under magnification, the letters appear to have shadows or ghost-like outlines. Coins showing strong doubling, especially when verified by grading companies like PCGS or NGC, often sell for over $10,000 depending on their preservation and clarity. Collectors love these because they represent a visual glimpse into the minting process, a moment when human and mechanical precision momentarily faltered. But the most famous of all 1989 dime errors, the ones that truly shocked the numismatic world, are the wrong planchet strikes. These are coins accidentally struck on metal blanks intended for another denomination. Imagine finding a dime that isn't the familiar silver-gray tone, but instead a coppery red color like a penny. Or perhaps a dime that's thinner, lighter, or slightly smaller than usual because it was struck on a foreign coin blank. These are the kinds of minting anomalies that happen so rarely, they instantly become valuable the moment they're discovered. One such coin surfaced in a roll of ordinary dimes in the early 2000s, a 1989 P. Roosevelt dime that had been struck on a copper-cent planchet. Its reddish color immediately drew attention. It was authenticated by PCGS and later featured in a heritage auctions event. Under the auction lights, the coin shimmered with an unusual beauty, a fusion of the dime's design and the penny's metal. Bidders knew what they were looking at, a genuine minting marvel. When the hammer fell, it sold for $42,000, a staggering amount for a 10-cent coin that once passed through everyday hands. Another extraordinary specimen appeared years later, this time at Stack's Bowers Galleries. It was a 1989 D-dime struck on a foreign coin planchet, possibly one meant for a Caribbean 10-cent piece. Its edges were slightly irregular, the weight was off, and the surface had a golden tint that no normal dime possessed. Collectors recognized it immediately as something special. The auction catalog described it as one of the finest examples of an off-metal error from the modern era. As bidding intensified, the final price climbed higher and higher, finally settling at a remarkable $120,000. That sale cemented the 1989 dime's place among the most valuable modern U.S. mint errors ever recorded. What makes these discoveries so compelling isn't just the price tag. It's the story behind them. Every error coin represents a perfect accident, a fleeting moment when precision gave way to chaos, and something one-of-a-kind was created. In a world that values uniformity, these coins remind collectors that flaws can be beautiful. Each one carries the fingerprint of a human process that, even with all its machines and safeguards, is still vulnerable to the unpredictable. The stories of how these coins were found are often just as fascinating as the coins themselves. One collector from Ohio discovered a copper-colored 1989 dime while sorting through his change. At first, he thought it was a discolored piece, perhaps a dime exposed to heat or chemicals. But when he noticed the faint difference in weight and size, he decided to send it for grading. When the results came back confirming it as an off-metal strike on a penny planchet, he was stunned. That small, overlooked coin would later sell for enough to pay off his car loan. Another case involved a retired machinist who bought several rolls of dimes from his local bank to search for silver pieces. Instead of silver, he found a broad-struck 1989 dime. Its edges stretched and flattened, but the design crisp and full. It later sold privately for nearly $9,000, proving once again that valuable treasures often hide in plain sight. These finds have inspired thousands of collectors and everyday people alike to start examining their spare change more closely. Online forums, YouTube videos, and coin hunting communities often buzz with stories of unusual finds. Coins with off-center designs, odd colors, or strange shapes. Every discovery fuels the dream that the next life-changing coin could be just one pocketful of change away. For serious collectors, authentication is essential. The difference between a genuine mint error and post-mint damage is crucial. A coin that's been altered after leaving the mint, whether by heat, pressure, or tampering, loses all numismatic value. That's why coins like the 1989 error dimes are always sent to PCGS, NGC, or ANAX for verification. Once encapsulated and certified, their legitimacy is beyond doubt, and their market value can rise exponentially. Auction houses like Heritage and Stack's Bowers continue to feature these coins in their elite sales, often alongside 19th-century rarities and famous historical pieces. The fact that a modern dime can stand among such company is a testament to how powerful and captivating mint errors have become in the eyes of collectors. During these auctions, the excitement in the room is tangible. The moment the auctioneer announces 1989 Roosevelt dime struck on foreign planchet, authenticated by PCGS, every eye turns toward the display and hands tighten around bitter paddles. It's not just a coin being sold, it's a moment of history. Even today, decades after those first discoveries, 1989 error dimes continue to surface from unexpected places. They appear in old collections, estate boxes, and forgotten jars of coins saved by families who never realized what they had. The thrill of those finds is timeless, that sudden realization that an ordinary dime can be something extraordinary. When you hold one of these coins, you're not just holding metal. You're holding a story, one of chance, craftsmanship, and discovery. A coin that should have been identical to millions of others, but instead became a masterpiece of imperfection. Its journey from mint to pocket to auction floor is a reminder of how rare beauty can emerge from the smallest accidents. 2001 was a year marked by change, challenge, and resilience across the United States. It was also a year when the U.S. Mint, as it had done for over 2 centuries, continued its mission of producing billions of coins for daily circulation. Among those countless coins struck that year were the humble Roosevelt dimes, small, silver-colored pieces that slipped into cash registers, vending machines, and pockets without a second thought. Yet, hidden among those billions were a handful of extraordinary mistakes. These were the 2001 US dime errors, coins born from unplanned imperfection, destined to capture the imagination of collectors years later. What started as routine minting would one day lead to discoveries worth tens of thousands of dollars, with some of these rare 2001 error dimes commanding prices from $38,000 to over $108,000 at major auctions like Heritage and Stacksbowers. To understand what makes these coins so special, you have to start with how they were made. The Roosevelt dime, first issued in 1946, features the dignified profile of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, a tribute to his legacy as a leader and humanitarian. By 2001, the coin's design was familiar and deeply ingrained in American life. Roosevelt on the obverse, the torch of liberty flanked by an olive branch and oak branch on the reverse. But even with modern minting technology, perfection is never absolute. When precision meets human oversight, mechanical pressure, or even microscopic debris on the die, fascinating errors can emerge. And that's exactly what happened with certain 2001 dimes. Collectors began to notice subtle irregularities on some dimes minted that year. At first glance, these pieces looked like typical circulation coins. But under closer inspection, something was off. Slightly distorted lettering, doubling in the inscriptions, strange shapes on the edges, or even missing design elements. Each error told a different story about what went wrong during the minting process. One of the most notable varieties from 2001 is the double die error. This occurs when the die, the engraved stamp used to strike each coin, is impressed twice at slightly different angles during its creation. On some 2001 dimes, this doubling can be seen on Roosevelt's eye, the inscriptions Liberty, and In God We Trust. Under magnification, these letters appear to have a shadow, like a faint echo of the design. Coins with strong doubling, especially those in mint state condition verified by grading services like PCGS or NGC, have commanded exceptional prices at auction. One particularly crisp double die example graded MS67 by PCGS sold at Heritage auctions in 2018 for nearly $38,000, setting a record for the date. Another fascinating mint error that year involved off-center strikes. These occur when the blank planchet, the metal disc that becomes the coin, is not properly aligned between the dies before being struck. The result is a coin where part of the design is missing, leaving a crescent-shaped blank area on the surface. A 5% or 10% off-center dime might be interesting, but when the strike exceeds 40%, with the full date and Roosevelt's face still visible, collectors go wild. One such example from 2001, a 45% off-center strike with a visible mint mark, appeared at Stacksbowers galleries in 2021. After intense bidding, it sold for over $42,000. The error was described as a stunning example of mechanical misalignment, resulting in a breathtakingly rare and visually dramatic appearance. Then there's the broad strike error, another captivating form of imperfection that collectors cherish. A broad strike happens when a coin is struck without the restraining collar that normally keeps its metal from expanding. Without that collar, the metal spreads outward during striking, resulting in a dime that appears wider, thinner, and often slightly distorted. These coins tend to have smoother edges rather than the reeded edges of normal dimes. A 2001 broad strike dime in pristine condition, with well-defined details and minimal circulation wear, fetched more than $12,000 at a Heritage auction event in 2019. But the most dramatic 2001 dime errors are the wrong planchet strikes, coins that were accidentally struck on metal blanks meant for other denominations. Imagine a dime struck on a copper penny planchet, giving it a reddish hue, or a dime struck on a foreign coin planchet, making it lighter or slightly different in size. These anomalies are among the most prized mint errors because they represent something that simply shouldn't exist, an intersection between precision and pure chance. One such 2001 dime struck on a cent planchet, with its distinct copper coloring and partial dime design, appeared in a Heritage sale in 2020. Verified by PCGS, the coin drew enormous interest from bidders and ultimately sold for a breathtaking $108,000. The auctioneer described it as a once-in-a-decade find, a modern minting miracle preserved in flawless condition. Stories like these captivate collectors because they blend mystery, history, and human imperfection. The journey from a blank planchet to a struck coin is one of exacting control. But every so often, a misfeed, a jammed collar, or a mistimed strike produces something extraordinary, a coin that defies the expected. Each error coin is a frozen moment of chaos, a metallic fingerprint of the mint's fallibility. Collectors who've stumbled upon these treasures often recall the disbelief they felt when they first noticed something strange about a seemingly ordinary dime. One story comes from a coin enthusiast in Arizona who was going through a box of change inherited from his late father. Among hundreds of ordinary dimes was one that looked darker, almost reddish in tone. He initially assumed it was stained, but its texture felt different. When he weighed it, the scale showed it was slightly lighter than a regular dime. Sensing something unusual, he sent it to NGC for verification. The results confirmed it. It was a 2001 Roosevelt dime struck on a copper cent planchet. What he thought was a 10-cent piece turned out to be a life-changing find, valued at over $60,000. Another fascinating story emerged from a coin roll hunter in Pennsylvania, who bought $250 worth of dimes from a local bank to search for silver coins. Among the rolls, one dime stood out. It was slightly larger, with faint reading and a stretched appearance. It turned out to be a broad-struck 2001 dime, certified MS-66, and later sold for $15,000 through Stack's Bowers. For that collector, what started as a hobby became an unforgettable moment of discovery. The excitement around these errors has inspired a new generation of collectors. Coin forums, YouTube channels, and social media groups dedicated to coin roll hunting often feature stories of people finding rare errors in their change. The 2001 dimes, in particular, have gained a sort of mythic status among modern collectors, a symbol that even the smallest coin can hold enormous value if it bears the right kind of imperfection. Experts emphasize that authentication is crucial for anyone who suspects they've found an error dime. Many ordinary coins can appear unusual due to damage after leaving the mint, things like heat exposure, flattening, or chemical reactions. These are not true mint errors and hold no collector value. Genuine errors, however, show specific characteristics that grading companies can confirm through close inspection under magnification. Once authenticated and encapsulated by PCGS, NGC, or ANAX, the coin's legitimacy and value are preserved, making it a true piece of numismatic history. At major auction houses. The buzz around modern error coins continues to grow. Heritage auctions and Stack's Bowers regularly feature them alongside classic rarities like Morgan dollars and early gold pieces. When a 2001 error dime appears in the lineup, collectors know it's something special. The auction room becomes charged with anticipation as the bids climb. 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. The auctioneer's voice crescendos until the gavel falls, sealing another record for a coin that began its life as mere pocket change. These moments are reminders that even modern mint errors can rival the excitement once reserved only for coins centuries old. There's something poetic about the idea that a small dime, a coin meant to represent the everyday, can transform into an artifact of immense value and intrigue. Each one carries its own story of machinery, timing, chance, and the unrepeatable magic of imperfection. Whether it's the faint doubling of Roosevelt's features, the dramatic skew of an off-center strike, or the stunning red gleam of a copper planchet, these details remind us that beauty often hides in the flaws. So the next time you handle a dime from 2001, pause for a moment. Look closely at its shape, color, and texture. Does it look slightly off-center? Does it feel lighter, darker, or different somehow? You might just be holding one of those rare treasures, a coin that slipped through the mint's watchful eye and into history. And if luck happens to be on your side, that ordinary-looking dime could be the one that turns out to be worth not just 10 cents, but anywhere from $38,000 to $108,000. Because in the world of rare coins, it's the smallest details that create the biggest stories. 2020 was a year that changed the world. The streets were quieter, people stayed home, and life slowed down in a way few had ever imagined. Yet even during those uncertain days, one thing never stopped moving: the flow of coins, bills, and currency that quietly powered daily life. And among those billions of coins struck by the U.S. Mint that year, something remarkable happened. Hidden within the flood of ordinary Roosevelt dimes were a few rare errors, mistakes so unique that they would later become the talk of the numismatic world. These tiny 10-cent pieces, coins most people wouldn't glance at twice, would eventually command prices between $32,000 and $90,000 at major auctions. To understand how a coin as common as a 2020 dime could reach such astonishing value, you have to go back to the beginning, the minting process itself. The Roosevelt dime has been part of American coinage since 1946, honoring President Franklin D. Roosevelt for his leadership and his pivotal role in founding the March of Dimes. By 2020, the design was familiar. Roosevelt's dignified profile on the obverse, and the torch, olive branch, and oak branch on the reverse, symbols of liberty, peace, and strength. The U.S. Mint at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco produced hundreds of millions of these coins, each intended to look exactly like the next. Precision was everything. But even the most advanced minting technology isn't immune to errors. And sometimes, those rare imperfections create coins unlike any others. In 2020, collectors began to notice something strange appearing in pocket change, coin rolls, and bank wrap sets. Some of the dimes looked slightly off, the rims uneven, the strikes misaligned, or the metal tone unusual. These weren't counterfeit pieces or post-mint damage. They were genuine U.S. Mint errors, and their rarity immediately sparked excitement among collectors. One of the most striking types from that year was the off-center strike. Normally, a blank planchet is perfectly centered between the upper and lower dies before it's struck. But occasionally, the planchet is misfed or shifted, resulting in a coin where part of the design is missing and a crescent of blank metal remains. In 2020, several dimes with dramatic off-center strikes were confirmed, some showing Roosevelt's face cut off halfway, yet still displaying the full date. Those details made them immensely desirable. A 2020 D dime with a 45% off-center strike graded MS66 by NGC sold at a Heritage Auctions event for nearly $32,000. A shocking amount for a coin still so new. Another error that drew attention was the double die obverse, where the die that strikes the coin carries a doubled image. The doubling can appear in the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," or even on the date. Under magnification, the letters seem to echo or cast a faint shadow. For the 2020 dimes, these double dies are rare and strikingly visible, particularly in high-grade examples. One such coin, authenticated and encapsulated by PCGS, crossed the auction block at Stack's Bowers Galleries in late 2022. It featured bold doubling on Roosevelt's lips and the date 2020 itself. The auction description called it a modern mechanical marvel born from an ancient error, and collectors agreed. When the gavel dropped, it realized an impressive $46,000. But the most extraordinary examples came from wrong planchet errors, coins struck on metal blanks meant for other denominations. In early 2023, reports surfaced of 2020 Roosevelt dimes struck on cent planchets, giving them a reddish tone rather than the usual silver-gray luster. One of these, a 2020 P dime struck on a copper penny planchet, appeared at a Stack's Bowers auction and stunned even seasoned collectors. The contrast between the penny-colored surface and the dime design was surreal, a familiar face in an unfamiliar hue. The coin weighed less than a normal dime and had slightly irregular edges, telltale signs of an off-metal strike. The catalog estimated it at $25,000 to $40,000, but the final hammer price reached $78,000, sending waves through the collecting community. A similar 2020 D example surfaced later at a Heritage auction sale, also struck on a foreign planchet possibly intended for an overseas coin. The color was a warm golden tint, and the texture subtly different from any other modern dime. Bidders recognized how special it was. A coin that combined modern minting precision with a once-in-a-decade mistake. After a fierce round of bidding, it sold for $90,000, setting a record for any 2020 dime at auction. What's remarkable about the 2020 dime errors isn't just their beauty or rarity, but the context of their creation. The year 2020 was one of disruption across industries. The U.S. Mint operated under extraordinary conditions, facing temporary shutdowns, staff reductions, and production backlogs. These challenges may have indirectly increased the chance of mechanical mishaps or human oversight in coin production. For collectors, that context adds historical weight to each error coin, each one a small relic of a year unlike any other. Beyond off-center and wrong planchet errors, a few more subtle mistakes have emerged. Some 2020 dimes exhibit die clashes, where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, transferring faint mirror images of their designs onto the opposite side. Under the right light, you can see ghostly outlines of the torch and branches across Roosevelt's cheek. Others show weak strikes, where the coin was struck with insufficient pressure, leaving soft, faded details. While less dramatic than major off-metal or double dies, these errors still fascinate specialists who appreciate the technical artistry behind coin production. The growing interest in modern mint errors has also changed how collectors hunt. In the past, people focused mainly on older coins, silver dimes, buffalo nickels, or Morgan dollars. But the thrill of discovery has shifted to modern pocket change. Stories abound of people finding 2020 dimes with striking errors in ordinary coin rolls purchased from banks. A young collector from Texas reportedly discovered an off-center 2020 D dime while searching through his first $25 box of dimes. When he had it graded, the coin came back MS-65 with a 40% off-center strike. He later consigned it to Heritage Auctions, where it sold for $38,000. That single coin transformed his small hobby into a lifelong passion. What makes these coins truly special is how they blur the line between the ordinary and the extraordinary. Every 2020 dime was intended to be identical, a perfectly manufactured 10-cent piece. But for a few, fate had other plans. Each error tells a story of a split-second imperfection. A misaligned die, a misplaced blank, a machine that blinked at just the wrong moment. In those moments, history was quietly made. At major numismatic events, dealers and collectors now look closely at every modern coin submission, aware that minting errors are increasingly sought after. The value of these coins isn't just in their rarity but in their symbolism. They remind us that even in an age of automation and precision, mistakes can still occur, and sometimes those mistakes become masterpieces. Collectors who own a 2020 error dime often describe the feeling as surreal. Imagine holding a 10-cent coin that once might have been dismissed as pocket change, now secured in a protective slab with a label reading struck on copper planchet, error, PSMS67. The moment you see that certification, you realize you're holding something irreplaceable. That's the magic of numismatics. It transforms the ordinary into a tangible piece of history as these coins gain recognition. More are surfacing from private hands. Some collectors have begun comparing 2020 error dimes to the legendary 1975 No-S Roosevelt dime or the 1965 transitional errors that rocked the hobby decades ago. Whether they'll reach the same legendary status remains to be seen, but one thing is certain. The 2020 dime has already made its mark. Every coin tells a story, and the 2020 Roosevelt dime's story is one of chance, resilience, and discovery. Born in a year defined by global uncertainty, these coins carry an unintended beauty, a reminder that even in chaos, something extraordinary can emerge. Somewhere out there, tucked away in a coin jar, a roll of change, or the back of a drawer, another rare error dime might still be waiting to be found. So the next time you get a dime in your hand, take a moment to look closer. Check the date. Study the design. Is it perfectly centered? Does it gleam like normal? Or does it seem slightly off in tone or texture? Because hidden among the billions of ordinary dimes, there could still be one that isn't ordinary at all. A small, copper-colored or off-center coin whose imperfection makes it perfect. And if you're lucky enough to find one, you might just be holding a dime worth not 10 cents, but $32,000 or even $90,000.